Hello art friends and welcome to my channel. If you like doing collage or just starting out with collage and are struggling a little bit to get compositions that you like, I am going to show you some really short exercises that you can do in your sketchbook that will help you build those compositional skills. Okay, this is going to be the first video in the series where we're going to be doing this small paper cut, what I call freeform collage. So I'm going to walk you through it and discuss my thought process for where I decide to place objects. The first thing we need to do is get all of our supplies. So glue stick, scissors, I have a hole punch. I have this great mixed media tablet, which is about 8 inches by 8.5 inches. I've pre-cut a whole bunch of shapes just out of collage paper that I already had made. And I decided to stick with an orange and black kind of color theme, just so it would sort of limit the stress I would have for trying to decide colors later. So I start, as usual, with a larger object and put that on there as sort of my base piece. And the reason I like to do this for these collages, as well as really any collage work that I do, is because it gives me something to work against, something to work from, like a place to start. It's kind of like those painters who like to do, you know, a complete wash across their canvas before they start their picture, just so they're not sort of staring at a blank white canvas. It's kind of the same idea, just so you're not staring at a blank white page. You know, get something glued down, and that's going to stay there, and that's going to be the, you know, the grounding piece. And then it's just a question of finding, you know, where to put other pieces. So I'm kind of almost randomly grabbing pieces at this point in time and just seeing if I can work them into the composition. I know I want to add some black because I do want this to be black and orange. I also want like a dark, you know, a nice strong dark color as well. Since orange can be a fairly light valued color, it's nice to have that variety in value as well. So I had that little piece of collage paper that had the dots on it that was created with a stencil, and I actually punched out a hole, but I also liked the negative shape that it had, where it sort of left the hole, but then it had the dots around it. And you'll see that a lot of these shapes are symmetrical. And the way I create those is I cut out a piece of paper and then just fold it in half and cut it in half, and then when you unfold it, it's symmetrical. So if you like to have your shapes that are symmetrical and you like to work that way, you know, that's just kind of a quick tip to do that. You can certainly fold it down even again and get something that's symmetrical, kind of like 4 ways, like a star pattern or something like that. I had these old dictionary or book pages, I can't remember what they were from, that I had just done some painting and mark making on, which is that top right piece and the couple of pieces below it that also had some darker marks on it, but it also had some orange on it. So it went, but it also added a little bit different pattern and texture. So I'm trying to not only think about color, but do I want to add some additional textures, and, you know, do I want lines and dots? Do I want, and you don't want to do too much different patterns, especially if you're just starting. Keep it simple. Pick a couple of different patterns and keep it more to more solids. That way you won't be quite as frustrated trying to get stuff to work together, because when you start getting too many patterns and too much visual busyness, it's really hard to make the pieces work. That really bright orange, shiny, sort of wavy pieces that are there were actually from a candy wrapper, and I really liked them because, I don't know, they just added a little bit of glitter so and shine to the thing. So I decided I wanted to keep those, and you'll see here that I changed the orientation to go up instead of horizontal, because I think because they're so bright, again, they're gonna be something that your eye sees. So it's kind of leading the viewer into the composition up to the top. And then the piece above it, because it sort of opens at the top like a vase or a vessel, it also leads your eye around either left or right. So when you're thinking about composition, part of what you need to think about is also how the viewer is going to get around the piece, right? How is their eye going to travel? And you want to build pieces or areas that either connect to lead that path or use color and shape to direct that path. So I'm trying to get some of that brighter orange in. I have that sort of leaf shape off to the right there that I put in. So I'm trying to balance out having that color in sort of somewhere else on the page, not necessarily right next to it. So that's why I keep trying to sort of put something on the left-hand side, either in that upper right corner or along the left side there. Same thing with that black dotted piece, polka dotted piece. I put the small circle down sort of in the bottom right there. And so I wanted to put that other piece because it's a little bit stronger because it's a larger piece. So it needs not to be right next to it. There needs to be stuff in between it that sort of creates a visual gap between those pieces. The piece I just tried to put in, I really like the sort of the straight, dark lines that were in that sort of section of text. I think that was just cut out of a magazine. I'm not sure it works there, but I just left it there. And then I wanted to fill in that corner in the upper right because that little sort of U-shaped piece I put in there, I liked there, but that really hard straight edge didn't really fit the collage. Again, these are a lot of organic pieces. So I'm thinking about not having a lot of hard edges so that your eye doesn't stop. So having things that are organic, rounded edges, things that sort of come around and come back on themselves are going to also help lead the viewer's eye around. And now it's just a question of balancing the composition from a color standpoint, a size of the shape standpoint. So you'll see I'm trying to distribute that orange color, both the shiny sort of candy wrapper orange color. I put another little piece of that up in the upper left. The pieces in the middle at the top have some black in it, so they do kind of balance out the black dots at the bottom. So again, I think of sort of my colors in a triangular pattern. I try to distribute colors so that you could draw a line from one to the other and have a triangular shape. You could also do that with shapes or sizes of shapes. But for me, color's more of a visual cue, so I try to make sure that my color is distributed. Unless there's some compositional choice that you're making that dictates that you put like a big glob of color down in one thing. And there are compositional themes or structures where, you may have all of your darks at your bottom part of your artwork and lighter colors at the top. But that's a choice. For me with these, I want to think about it just from basic composition principles as far as distributing colors and shapes, making it pleasing, leaving white space. I think a lot of collage artists think they have to cover, the whole page or, board or canvas or whatever they're working on and not leave any white space. I like using white space as a design element. I think it can be very strong as far as not only giving your elements, some breathing room, but in helping also pull the viewer through a piece, depending on where those white spaces are. So I decided to add that other larger orange piece that was cut out of the same collage paper as the bottom piece. Just because I felt like that space up at the top there was quite large, and putting too many little pieces might get a little too busy. So having, another larger piece up there, I think balanced it okay. And honestly, at this point, the composition could be done. The only thing that's sort of bothering me a little bit is that very last piece that I just put on, sort of floating there by itself. All of the other pieces, are fairly connected. The ones in the upper right aren't really connected to other pieces, but they're fairly close to other pieces, so they feel like they're connected. And that sort of U-shaped piece is very similar in color and pattern to the one next to it. So they kind of feel like they are together. Whereas the orange piece I just put up there is kind of, it feels right now like it's hanging out in no man's land a little bit. So I'm trying to figure out how to connect it either to the piece below or the piece next to it. And I found this little scrap of this really strong black mark that I think worked really well in there. Because that's a piece that's got a nice big vertical center part in it. It just sort of accented that, as well as those curvy orange lines. It sort of, again, pulls your eye up and works with that sense of verticalness that this collage is now kind of having. So it was not too difficult a choice to just add that there. And it also pulls a really strong black up to the top of the collage. So I have a bunch of other little pieces now. It's kind of finicky detail work, and at this point it's a question of like how much you want to fiddle around with it, or is less more, right? So you have to sometimes step away from it and come back and try to decide, like, does it feel balanced? Look at it in a mirror is another way to see if the composition feels balanced. Here I realized I probably needed something down there in that lower left corner because it was feeling a little like the straight edge of those dots just kind of stopped and hung out. I maybe could have flipped that piece over the other way, but since I already had it glued down, it was almost impossible to pull tissue paper back up. So I decided to add another little element down there that kind of broke up that really straight edge over there, just that little dot. And it overlaps, so you can also see through it. So it's creating a little bit of extra texture. And again, it probably could be done at this stage, but I always try to, check a few other little pieces to see if they add anything. I'm not sure why I went to the other pile, because there's I think I was trying to maybe pull in some blue. And I had these really little pieces of blue tissue paper. And I thought I could use another pop of color. It has the orange, but that blue was really, there's a little bit of blue in those pieces at the top. So even though it's a different blue, I think just adding a little pop of blue that added some interest. And of course, blue is a complementary color of orange. So blue and orange always work well together. This piece I really like, but I don't think it works in this composition just because it's just not the right feel. It's too pointy, or it was also too big. So I, ended up cutting off some and tried making it smaller. And it just really wasn't working. So I was trying to find another blue piece that might work down at the bottom. And then I found this circle, which I thought could work. So I just set it there for a little while to see if I liked it. And then here was the outside part of that, which, you know, people don't think about using the negative space, you know, around things either. And I keep all of those because I think they also make great little pieces, depending on what they are. But again, this one I think was too pointy, like it was too thin. It needed to be a little bit more substantial. And so I'm just really trying to see if there's any other pieces that work better down there, because I do like that circle down there. But I think now I'm just reaching too many pieces that are just not in the same, you know, color scheme. They just really don't work, because I wanted to keep this, you know, very simple as far as the colors. I think I was thinking about the verticalness of the collage, which is why I went back to that piece. Like I felt like I wanted to sort of finish that corner down there, but I'm not sure it works again, which is why I didn't glue it down. It just kind of sits there. So now I go back to the circle and really decide that that's really what needs to be there. But I didn't want to outline that other circle, so I just wanted to overlap everything. Again, sort of tying everything together, giving it a little bit of depth, because now there's some layers. And then finally just adding this little piece up there. And then I found this little piece, and it had a little bit of black in it. So it kind of worked because it sort of pulled your eye up again off to the right. And then I tend to roll everything down just to make sure they stuck. And finally, when I looked at it the next day, I decided I did need something at that bottom left-hand corner, so I added a couple of little punched out dots. Anyway, this was so fun. I hope you give it a try. These really don't take very long. They're fun to do. And if you know anybody who likes to work on composition and maybe are struggling with composition, it would be great if you could share this video and like it if you would like to see more.